The movie begins in the cockpit of an airplane traveling to Novosibirsk, Russia. Katya, who is 7 years old, and her mother are among the few passengers on board. Even though this is the little girl's first time, she seems quite composed throughout the entire experience. However, disaster strikes shortly after she falls asleep. The plane experiences violent turbulence as a result of a malfunctioning engine. Katya panics when she wakes up and discovers that her mother is absent. She does, however, spot a strange elderly woman chanting gibberish behind her. The plane crashes shortly after the pilots lose complete command of the aircraft. Except for little Katya, who miraculously survived, everyone on board dies. The scene then switches to 20 years after the incident. Katya has a daughter named Diana and has long since recovered from the trauma. She is one of the town's most successful psychiatrists in terms of her work. Some reporters approach Katya in a park and start interrogating her inanely about that fateful day. They want to know how she got through the impossible. However, Katya simply ignores them and walks away, claiming that she must attend an important meeting. The mother and daughter board a plane to Moscow the following evening to see their relatives. It comes out that Katya no longer has a fear of flying after the incident, and despite the terrible weather, she boarded this flight. Due to the same factor, only a few passengers are aboard. Katya, on the other hand, meets Alexei, a handsome young man. After assisting her with the luggage, he sits directly across from them. Katya starts talking to the stranger as the plane is getting ready to take off, but then she hears a noise in the back. It turns out that a senior citizen is questioning her decision to travel in this weather, so she is asking the flight attendant to let her go. But her husband is determined to stop her. Because she is a psychologist, Katya immediately steps in and helps the elderly woman relax. Before returning to her seat, she gives her some pills for stress relief. We meet the two remaining passengers somewhere else in the front rows. One of them is Nikolai, a wealthy businessman, and the other is Pavel, a sketch artist who has a more drug-like appearance. Nikolai tries to start a conversation with the artist with arrogance, but the artist doesn't pay much attention to him. Katya rushes to the bathroom and takes some pills when she begins to hear strange noises. It turns out that she has obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which causes her to overthink things. She returns to her seat after a while, but when she opens the door, something shocking happens. Katya is astonished to find herself in the house where she grew up, with her mother, before the accident. She looks around in a daze until she comes across a door that takes her back to the plane. Later, Alexei asks her if she's okay because he sees that she's feeling very uneasy. Little Diana reveals everything about how her mother was the sole survivor of a fatal plane crash 20 years ago because Katya doesn't say a word. She pretends not to be afraid of flying at the moment, but deep down she is still troubled. Alexei is taken aback by this. Katya gradually calms down after the plane finally takes off in the following scene. After that, she talks to Alexei, who tells her that he is a war correspondent. He has visited virtually every conflict zone in the world. Katya also discusses her work as a psychiatrist in response. After a few hours, everyone goes to sleep, and Katya dreams she sees herself when she was younger. She and her mother are talking about their day normally. Katya then notices that her mother's burnt and wounded face. She asks the mother if they were killed in the plane crash, but the mother assures her that it was just a nightmare and that they are fine. Katya wakes up in the plane as a result of the mother's sudden possession. Sadly, the situation is not improving here. The elderly man in the back row experiences a cardiac arrest as the plane experiences severe turbulence. Katya and the flight attendants rush to assist and begin CPR immediately. The man grabs Katya, whispers something to her, and then suddenly awakens with a possessed look. He then passes out again. Katya glances around and observes a strange black hand hidden behind a seat as the turbulence continues to worsen. The elderly man passes away abruptly, leaving behind a devastated wife. As the deadly turbulence forces them back to their seats, the passengers have no time to console her. The lack of oxygen in her body causes Katya to slowly lose consciousness. However, when she awakens, the turbulence is gone and everything is back to normal. Katya goes up to Alexei right away and tells him that the same old man whispered to her the same words about a strange old lady who had spoken to her 20 years ago on the doomed flight to Novosibirsk. The woman almost seems to have cursed her to die, which is why everything is going on. Alexei, on the other hand, denies any of it. He simply informs her that the pills she took earlier are causing her to experience hallucinations. The elderly man is eventually carried to the front of the plane by the flight attendants, who cover him up. However, Katya is even more suspicious because the captain has yet to make any announcements despite everything that has taken place. To make things even more bizarre, the deep wounds she suffered 20 years ago on her leg have also vanished. Diana, who is sitting in the back seat with her mother, draws a picture of the plane in the interim. She then asks Katya to move them to different seats, but she declines. The latter continues to observe the same bizarre black figures all throughout the aircraft. An announcement is made by the flight attendant as the weather continues to deteriorate. She discloses that the plane will make an emergency landing in Novosibirsk, which is the same city Katya was traveling to 20 years ago. In the meantime, a strange liquid begins to drip onto the wealthy businessmen. He found Nikolai's shoes irritating. He smokes in an effort to calm down, but as soon as he lights a fire, the strange liquid ignites and completely consumes him. Instantaneously, Katya and the other passengers assist him. However, Nikolia already has severe third-degree burns when they put out the fire. Katya turns her attention to her daughter as the flight attendants rush to provide him with first aid. She only notices the same spooky figures behind the seats, though, just like before. Katya then experiences a second vision that takes her back to the previous 24 hours. She and her daughter are debating whether or not to board the Moscow flight. Little Diana says she doesn't want to, but Katya manages to persuade her otherwise. At this point, the scar on her leg is clearly visible. Katya suddenly hears her daughter's screams that night as she wanders the house. She runs to her bedroom in a panic, but the door is locked. When Katya tries to open the door, she loses her balance and goes blind. Soon, Diana, concerned, rushes to her and reveals that Katya passed right by her. The latter is taken aback by this, and she apologizes to the young girl for her carelessness. However, their emotional moment is cut short when Alexei arrives and requests Katya's assistance in rescuing Nikolai. They begin giving the poor man treatment shortly thereafter. Because his airways are blocked, Katya carefully props his head up to give him some breathing room. After that, as she is washing her hand, she tells Alexei that her hallucinations have become so severe that she is now unable to tell the difference between imagination and reality. In the meantime, Pavel continues to sketch while murmuring some words that can be understood. Katya loses it when she sees him acting so carefree and casual in such a situation and begins to scold him. However, as soon as Alexei reveals that her daughter is watching, she abruptly stops. The burned man attempts to grab his phone all of a sudden while speaking. Therefore, Pavel quickly pulls out his phone and displays a picture of his family. Before succumbing to his injuries, Nikolai exhales a sigh of relief when he sees this. Katya apologizes to Pavel for her previous actions now that two people on the plane have passed away. The artist responds that he occasionally gets lost while drawing. Katya suddenly realizes that the elderly woman has been in the restroom for an unusually long time as the two continue their conversation. She makes a hasty inspection, but the flight attendants tell her to return to her seat. However, Katya will no longer be pushed around, and when she starts to argue, the attendants reluctantly open the door to discover that the restroom is empty. Katya is stunned and prepares to return to her seat. However, the elderly man, who is supposed to be dead, abruptly pushes her. Then, a slew of sinister hands hold her in place, presumably to kill her. But Katya quickly wakes up from her visions and immediately goes to her daughter. Even though they are in the middle of the flight, she tells Diana that they should get off the plane right away because she is aware that something bad is about to happen. Alexei tries to stop them, but then he passes out and starts bleeding from his eyes. The two flight attendants then attempt to prevent Katya from leaving. They explain that they will land in Novosibirsk in a matter of minutes and that waiting is the safest option. One of the flight attendants starts throwing up water at that exact moment, and she dies horribly. After that, a scared Katya approaches Pavel and steals his sketchbook. She realizes that he has always been drawing her visions of the dark figures as she goes through it. Pavel burns and vanishes into thin air when she finds an exit door in one of his sketches. The remaining flight attendant and Alexei attempt to halt Katya as she heads toward the exit door with Diana. They say that on the other side of the door, something very bad is waiting for her. While Alexei began bleeding from his head and passed away, an inaudible force pulled the flight attendant and slammed her to the ground. Katya strikes the door with all her might when she notices this and eventually opens it. However, she is completely shocked by what she sees on the other side. It is a different cabin on a plane that is identical to the one she came from. Despite this, Katya maintains her optimism and continues through the exit doors until she discovers a brand new cabin. Diana, on the other hand, is at the end of the hallway, not with her at this point. Additionally, she is accompanied by an odd dark figure. Katya rushes to save her daughter out of panic, causing everything to rewind. At this point, everything finally begins to fall apart. It turns out, shockingly, that the entire situation inside the plane is not real. Katya is still aboard the doomed aircraft, which will soon crash and burst into flames. Actually, the elderly woman, whom Katya had always considered to be a bad person, is reciting a prayer to kill her. She doesn't want the young girl to witness the terrible things that are about to happen to her. Katya begins to imagine a future in which she is still alive as a result of this slowing of time. She has all of it: a satisfying occupation, a devoted daughter, and, most importantly, a secure home. Katya, on the other hand, tries to wake up as the plane rapidly sinks to the ground because she doesn't want to die. As a result, Katya is freed from her spell by the elderly woman, and she now controls her destiny. Katya then goes back to her daughter to say her final goodbye. Diana tells her mother to carefully remember her surroundings after they hug, suggesting that there might still be a way to escape. Katya then thinks back to the drawing her daughter had made earlier. It demonstrated that they were in the final row, row 19. We are taken back to the doomed plane from 20 years ago in the following scene. Surprisingly, this plane contains the same individuals with whom Katya has interacted in the past. The elderly man experiences a sudden cardiac arrest, prompting Katya's mother to rush to his aid. Little Katya wakes up a few minutes later as the plane is about to crash and heads straight for row 19. She meets up with her mother and Alexei on her way. The latter assists them in seating themselves in row 19, but an explosion kills him before he can join them. The plane soon breaks up into several pieces when it hits a lake. Katya and her mother are miraculously alive, despite the fact that it appears that no survivors have been left behind. They are safe because row 19 is the only part of the plane that was not destroyed, thanks to the little girl's quick thinking. They burst into tears of joy at the movie's conclusion, grateful for their second chance at life. Thanks for watching my videos. Please hit that like button and do not forget to subscribe to my channel.